So, first thing, when should you take your first orchestra audition? I say the sooner the better. I didn't take my first orchestra audition until 2014, which was 2 years after I finished my master's degree. So I think that's a little bit late. I did an audition last year where another student of my teacher did the audition. She's in high school. Of course, she's an advanced high school player, but I still thought it was so cool because it was at a nearby city and she could just get a feel for the experience without having too much pressure. I also think that once you go through and you do one, each time you get a better feel of what to expect and what it's like, and then you can sort of feel out if this is something you want to continue with or not. The longer you put it off, the more sort of scary it gets in your mind, and that's not good. If you're wanting to get an orchestra job, this is the way you get it, is with an audition. If you're in college, I think that's also a great time because you can have your teacher help you with the excerpts, and then you can record your audition and then have them give you some feedback also, which is so helpful when you're going through this process, and a lot of times you don't get any feedback from your audition committee. When you're selecting an audition, don't automatically rule yourself out of an orchestra that you think is out of your league, because you never know. Some auditions do check screen resumes and they'll not invite certain people if they don't think you have the experience required. But other orchestras, and it's not just the larger orchestras or the smaller orchestras that do one way or another, it's just each orchestra is different. Some orchestras just invite every person. For example, the Chicago Symphony is one of the country's best, and they invited everyone. If you're not invited to the audition based on your resume, don't take it personally. I have not been invited so many times. There's a lot of expense for an orchestra to hold an audition, because they have to pay all of the committee members, they have to rent the space, all of this. They just don't have enough time. Something else you can do is have a mentor or a teacher review your resume and just be sure that it's representing you well and including all of your relevant experience. If you can't get your hands on the full orchestral part, don't stress about it, just use your excerpt book, it's fine. You can check IMSLP if you need the full part. Some composers will not be available. Prokofiev, Stravinsky are a couple that you won't find on IMSLP, and a lot of times the orchestras will actually send you those particular parts because certain ones will just be very difficult to find. You can also try asking your friends that have done auditions or your teachers to see if they have the parts that you need, and it'll be quicker than ordering it, waiting for it if you're in a time crunch. I always prefer to arrive the day before the audition. They may not reveal the exact time of your audition until pretty close to the audition date, so I like to be there the night before. It lets me settle, have a good night's rest there, and then if my audition happens to be really early, it's no problem because I'm there. It also gives you a little bit of room for error in case there's some kind of delay. You'll still make it to the audition. Give yourself as much time as possible to prepare for an audition, and be wary of accepting any extra responsibilities while you're in preparation mode. I do highly recommend taking lessons from someone who is an orchestral player. There's so many subtleties in orchestral playing and playing excerpts that they're just so specific to this particular repertoire. I did a lot of auditions where I didn't take any lessons because I thought, I'll just do the best I can. That'll be good enough, right? But I didn't realize that it's not only about being good enough or expressive enough or technically clean enough, it's also about communicating that you understand the traditions of the orchestra and how these major works are performed. When you're packing for an audition, a lot of times we might want to bring this thing or that thing that we think we might need because we're just anxious about the overall audition. But when you're packing, just make sure you definitely have your flute and your music. It's so important, and sometimes when we get worried about other things, we forget the obvious thing. Then if you're traveling by airplane, make sure you have your identification. That's all you really need. Then you need your audition clothing. So make sure you have your outfit and your shoes. I always have to tie my hair back. I cannot play with my hair down. I get too annoyed. Something to tie your hair back. Obviously, all of the normal things you would need when you're traveling, like toiletries. I like to bring a book because most of the time at an audition, there's a lot of sitting around and waiting, and it can be pretty intimidating if you're not used to it, especially to just be sitting around looking and or listening to all these other great flute players. I find having a book just helps me calm down a little bit. It's sort of a security. If I don't feel like talking to anyone, I can just read a book. A few days before the audition, I do like to write down a schedule for myself. I subscribe to Rob Knopper's Audition Hacker emails, and he suggested this once, and I found it so helpful to have a schedule to follow when we're traveling and we're out of our regular routine. It's so easy to lose track of time. So what I do a few days before I leave is I write out a schedule starting from when I leave my house. So I will decide what time I'm gonna leave for the airport, what time I'm gonna get there, approximately what time I arrive in my destination, and then even what time I'll go to sleep. I like to have everything mapped out for me so that I know I've already thought about what I'm gonna wanna do, how I'm gonna get my dinner. I often research where I'm gonna get dinner or food from before I arrive at my destination so that all of this is planned out already and I can just go from point A to point B, and I know that all of the things that I need to take care of will be taken care of. This way, when I arrive at my destination, I don't have to worry about what time I need to get up, what time I need to leave my hotel. Am I going to be late? I've already figured out how long it's going to take me to get from my hotel to the audition site and how early I want to be there. It takes a lot of responsibility off of you on the day of and allows you to focus on the performance. One thing I like to do is to always reserve a room with a fridge. Sometimes it is slightly more expensive, but my typical audition trip will be me arriving at the airport, usually renting a car depending on the city, and then hitting a grocery store. I like to just get all of the food that I'm going to eat on the trip from the grocery store, then put it in the fridge. This will include all of my meals and snacks, because snacks are very important. Sometimes these auditions just take so long and you're just waiting and waiting, and it is lunchtime and your group still hasn't started even though they were supposed to start over an hour ago. So definitely have some kind of non-perishable snack with you. I like to plan to arrive at the audition about an hour early. That sounds like a lot, but I've had a few auditions where I planned to be there half an hour early, and I just barely made it there on time because I'm going to a place that I'm not familiar with. I'm trying to find the right room, trying to find out where to park. All of these things need to be figured out, and you don't always have the opportunity to figure it out ahead of time. Adding that time crunch to your day of audition is really not necessary. Just give yourself plenty of time to get there, especially if you're not familiar with the audition site. If it's possible, try to warm up before you actually go to the audition site. It's so distracting to have so many flute players around you playing all these excerpts, scales, warm-ups, and it's hard to focus on your own sound. So if you have the opportunity, warm up in your hotel room or even your car. Get some time to really acquaint yourself with your sound that day. When I'm in the group warm-up room, this may be strange, but I actually like listening to other people play. I think it's interesting, just like on Instagram, it's very interesting to hear what I notice when I listen to other players. It can be very intimidating to be in those group warm-up rooms or even in a personal warm-up room because really it's usually a dressing room, which is not soundproofed. You can very easily hear the other people who are warming up or practicing. I really try to resist the urge to play fast or somehow almost impress the other people who are warming up because that puts your focus in the wrong place. I do try to play everything a little bit slower and very controlled and deliberate when I am warming up for an audition. I also like to revisit some of the practice techniques that I have used leading up to the audition. So for example, if I've been practicing with the movable fermata technique, I will do a little bit of that under tempo on the day of the audition. I really try to resist the urge to play through the whole thing at full tempo. I don't think that it really helps. Although it's tempting to do that and reassure yourself that things are going to go well, it still feels different on the stage. There's nothing wrong with playing through your excerpts, but do make sure that you're being very aware of what you're doing. And make sure that you're not trying to compete with the person that's warming up next to you. Once I get into the personal warm-up room, I like to get my phone set up to record myself. Ideally, I have already cleared some space on my phone. Sometimes I've forgotten and I have to clear some things off, but I get the app all set up so that all I have to do is when they knock on my door and tell me to come to the stage, I just press record and I stick it in my pocket or my folder or wherever I'm putting it. That way, I don't have to worry about messing with the phone anymore. It's all ready, I press record, and I don't think about it. Actually, most of the time I forget for a while to stop the recording. At first, I felt a little weird about recording myself at the audition because I felt like I was gonna get in trouble or something. Considering that you have invested a lot of money and time and energy into this audition, I think that we should all feel that we at least deserve to know what happened in our own audition. Most auditions I've been to do say that you're welcome to play a note or a little bit to warm up before you start playing your first excerpt. I don't do this because I've been told not to by most orchestral players. I think it's mostly because if you happen to mess up something on your warm-up, you're already putting yourself at a disadvantage. Also, it's just not really my style to do that. I generally, when I'm nervous or uncomfortable, I just go for it. I don't like to test it. I like to just play and start. There's nothing wrong with doing a warm-up if that's really what you want to do, but it's gotta be the most glorious, in-tune, beautiful warm-up that you've ever played. So I have heard a good tip that if you are going to do a warm-up, practice that warm-up as if it's an excerpt. I don't want to add another thing for myself to have to warm up and play perfectly and worry about, so I just start. One of the most important parts about being eventually successful is to just keep trying. So whatever you have to tell yourself, to just keep showing up to these auditions. If this is what you want to do, tell yourself that. After the audition is done, I always get ice cream. Okay, it's not always ice cream, but I always like to get some kind of treat for myself to just say, Good job. You did a lot of work. You tried your best. You had courage in a very scary and intimidating situation. Maybe that's one of the things that helps me to keep trying again. I will also listen to my recording and see if what I felt happened actually happened. And I do like to listen to the recording several different times over the next week or so, because I find that my impression of how I played will sort of change as time passes. Hopefully you've been recording yourself up to the audition so that nothing is too surprising when you listen to your actual audition recording. When I'm done with my audition, I also like to either text or email my teacher because she likes to know and she's helped me. She's a part of this journey with me. I used to think that this is not important, it's not exciting because I didn't even advance. I think it's really important to build that relationship with your teacher. It's not just about being successful or trying to show them how successful you can be. It's also about relating to each other as humans, and part of building that relationship is being open and honest with each other when something happens, a difficult experience like being rejected or being disappointed in yourself. I like to take my audition recording to my teachers so that we can listen to it together also, and they can give me feedback. You should also email whoever you've been corresponding with about the audition to see if you can receive some feedback from your audition committee. I have done this for most auditions I've been to, and most of the time I haven't actually received the feedback, but the few times I have, it's been so helpful and has given me a lot of really good information and ideas on what to work on. I hope that gave you some useful information. Let me know if you have any questions, and if you want to keep seeing my YouTube videos, please subscribe, or you can follow me on Instagram at Elise Hokamp, and good luck.